Welcome to the second hour of Tuesday Advanced Lecture, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the month of April 2017, and we're talking about World Champions Classics. Basically, I've selected some fantastic games from World Champions, and I show it this month. This next game that I'm about to show you is from the second World Champion. Who am I talking about? Emanuel Lasker. It's different from Edward Lasker. Right. So if you ask anybody to tell you a great game from one of the contemporary world champions, he will have a game to show you. Oh, I remember his game against that guy who played so fantastic, this and that. But you almost don't remember any games from Emanuel Lasker because, well, he lived over 100 years ago. He was only the second world champion. But there was one thing unique about Emanuel Lasker that may not be repeated for any other world champion. 27 years he was world champion. So besides being a great chess player, he was also a mathematician. He was a philosopher. He was a psychologist. They say in some positions he intentionally went into inferior openings or middlegame to make his opponent feel good and start attacking him, and then he would come back and strike at them. So I don't know how true that is. There is dispute on that.
And Lasker was a master of in-game defense.
All the world champions, without exception, they were great in endgames. All the world champions, without exception, they were very good, if not great, in the middlegame. But we can't say that about opening part. We had someone like Capablanca who was fairly lousy in openings. He never studied much openings. That shows that opening is just a phase to get your pieces out. The real chess is middlegame and endgame. And any world champion can attest to that. So this game that I've selected for tonight is by Mikhail Chigorin as white. Chigorin, by the way, is another great player who never became world champion, even though he beat all his world champion contemporaries. Against Emanuel Lasker. This was played in London in 1899. Lasker is black. And I didn't select this game because this is also a French defense. It just happened to be that way. E4, E6. Chigorin is, they call him father of Russian chess. He revolutionized many ideas in chess. For example, this next move is Chigorin's move. He's the one that first pioneered it. On move 2, how can he pioneer a move on move 2 of the chess? What do you think that is? Knight f3 is not the best move, but it's perfectly playable. And I'm sure it's been around for several hundred years. So it can't be that move. But maybe Chigorin's move was not pioneered by himself. I mean, he didn't play it first time. But I faced this move, by the way. Queen e2. This goes against all the principles of the opening. He just blocked his bishop diagonal. He moved the queen out early. And what's so good about this move? Well, the best thing about this move is that if black plays d5 now, which he normally does, after pawn takes, he cannot take back with a pawn. He has to take with a queen. And queen over here is actually very safe. Because my main repertoire against e4 is e6 against my strongest opposition, I face this move every now and then. I would say online and over the board. I face this about a good dozen times. And if white plays this move, another reason for playing this move, as opposed to the main lines, is to put black on his own. Whatever opening memorizations he's done, out the window. He's completely on his own. So Chigorin made this move. I would say the most principled move for black right now is c5, to make d4 a difficult move for white. But instead, Lasker played knight c6. Great players are great piece players, not so much pawn players. So they have a lot of respect for piece development. White to play knight c3. This move looks kind of odd too. But at least it prevents d5. And that's white's goal is to make it either very difficult for black to play d5 or impossible. At this point, d5 is impossible. So, Trey, can black play d5 in this position?
He can.
Very good. Is that a good move?
No.
Okay. You can tell the kid is too smart. So white to play after knight c3. Black completely changed the position, the character of the position. Now the queen here looks very silly, right? He was hoping to prevent black playing. So I like this move. This move really says a lot about Lasker, his psyche, his mentality. That this queen is terribly misplaced now. And of course, if queen goes back, guess what? Trying to make things equal. It's as if black has started the game. e5, e4, knight c6, knight f3 is black's move. So white is already at a point of no return. What did he do? g3. I mean, knight d4 queen here is not a threat. This knight can easily be kicked out later. But for now, white focuses on its development. Black play knight f6. Another sign of classical players. Almost always their knights on c6 and f6 for black, and c3 and f3 for white. So, looks like black is threatened to play d5 now. Therefore, bishop g2, putting more pressure on this square. And black played bishop c5. You see, black is not doing anything unusual, extraordinary, just simple developing moves. Capablanca has a famous quotation. He says, ultimate beauty is in simplicity. It's a very loaded statement. Bishop c5, d3. And black played d6. Bishop g5. Okay, typical developing move. But when there's a fianchetto bishop here, on bishop g5, if black plays h6, you cannot retreat here. That means you must either take or retreat back. So this move makes perfect logical sense. So white takes and black takes. So what do you think white gained that gave black the bishop pair in exchange?
The d5 square.
The d5 square, which can easily be challenged with bishop here. And by the way, this pawn is still here. So that pawn also could kick a knight from d5. So I would say white did not get enough for giving black the bishop pair.
Kasparov has called bishop pair the mini exchange.
White to play, he cashed in immediately. The real point of this move is not so much to threaten the queen, which is doing it for now, but to play c3 at some point and keep these black pieces from these squares. So knight d5, queen d8, and sure enough, c3. It's too early to assess this position. I mean, we're still pretty much in the opening phase. When your opponent has a fantastic piece compared to yours, you want to challenge it. This is white's star piece for the moment. So knight e7, plus that after c3, this knight really has no business around here, right? So worst piece first, knight e7. White took and black took. White castled long. Now this changes the assessment of the position. When some drastic move takes place, or a lot of exchanges, or something unusual in the position. Black to play, no reason to panic. Continue with development. It's interesting that black did not castle short. Even though white has not launched a pawn avalanche on this side of the board, black could have easily castled short. But this move obviously is more flexible. White to play f4. Okay, so this move also makes sense. What did black do? Now black castled long. Sometimes players, often black, because he's at a disadvantage of the first move, they wait to see which side of the board their opponent castles, and just to be on the safe side, they castle same side. Because when there are opposite side castlings, what's the number one thing to do? pawn avalanches against your opponent's king. And it becomes a rat race. It's a question of who gets there first. So white to play knight f3. Black played bishop b6. I really like this move. I mean, most people in this position, they would think, let me see, which one of my pieces is not developed? It's this rook. So rook a e8, which is a perfectly good move. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with this. But the reason I like this move, because immediate d4 is not with a threat on a piece. And eventually white may play b4 or d4 at some point. Bishop b6. Very good cautionary prophylactic move. White to play rook h f1. So white figured chance of black is not going to take here, because after this pawn takes, what happens in effect, black's e pawn gets traded with white's g pawn, which gives white a good pawn presence in the center. So if black is not going to do that, chances are he wants to do it and open this half open f file for the rook. Rook f h f1, black to play f6. This is really interesting move. Black has a light square bishop here, so he has all these pawns in dark squares. And the dark square bishop is already outside the pawn chain too. This way he gives himself good scope for that bishop. In the old days, they used to say somebody has a good bishop and a bad bishop. And the good bishop was the one that was opposite color of your central pawns. And the bad bishop was the other bishop. But now this Jeremy Stillman first popularized the term fair bishop instead of bad bishop. I mean, nobody can say this is a bad bishop, even though it's the same color as the central pawns. So in this case, they call this bishop fair bishop. Had this bishop been still at f8, in that case, it would have been a bad bishop, hemmed in by his own dark square pawns. So we have black has a good bishop and a fair bishop. And all the world champions, there are very few of them who are famous for playing with bishop pair. One of them is Lasker. Fischer is another one. So white to play king b1. Okay. Often when you castle long, you want to move the king to b1 or even a1, just to make sure you don't get a check at the wrong time later on. King b1, and black played rook h e8. This is really interesting. Even at master level, sometimes it's very difficult to see where your rooks belong. And I can show you master games that somebody played, for example, rook here, 2 moves later move it back to f8. At the time that they played here was correct. 2 moves later, maybe some pawns got traded or something, moving it here was correct. Or it could be wrong, and they figured out a couple of moves later. I like Lasker's thinking on this move. He figured white is eventually, if white takes here, black chances is going to take with this pawn, half open file for the d rook. And if he doesn't, white wants to push this pawn. And if he pushes this pawn, after this pawn takes pawn, this big pawn becomes the target for black pieces. That's why rook h e8 and not f8, as opposed to white's. So white to play f5. Okay. It's very difficult to assess this move. White just put a rook on f1, and now these pawns are locked up. What's the rationale? So maybe the follow-up would be g4, h4, g5 to break through, and maybe in this rook, possibly back to g1 to control this square.
Well, the bishop is on d6.
Oh, that's right. So he doesn't have that option either.
Maybe knight h4 to g6.
Yeah, knight h4 to g6 is what I think.
Knight h4, g6 he has, right? Right, harasses those pieces, but of course he's going to move the queen, move the rook, and bishop e8, trying to deal with the knight. So it's not a permanent position. Knight where?
Knight d2, knight c4.
Knight d2, c4 is also a good plan.
Or maybe maneuver the knight to d5.
So it's black to play now, and black played bishop a4. This is another one of those mysterious moves. I'm sure Lasker knew that obvious response is b3. But pushing the pawn b3, who does it help? White or black?
Black.
Objectively, I mean, analyzing the position, not because Lasker played it.
Or weakens the pawns around the king.
So,
C4 makes up for it.
yeah, I went over this game over 20 years ago, and I really had a hard time understanding this move. Why is b3 help black, which is obviously what he's trying to provoke, right? So this is how I rationalized it. These two pawns are guarding each other very nicely, right? So by playing b3, this could have potential to become weak later on, maybe with bishop here even. And he's trying to create some accidents around here. So what should white do now? Rook c1, rook d2, rook e1.
Put it on the king. See, rook c1. d2.
Rook c1. He left the diagonal open for the moment. Black to play, king b8. If there is one feature that I found about great players, world champions, as soon as somebody puts a rook in front of their queen or king, on the very next move, they move it out of the way. Because that's how combinations are born, right? So the very next, no matter how many pieces are in between, they move it out of the way immediately. So this move makes perfect sense too. White to play, knight d2. Okay, this move looks good too. He's trying to get one of the bishops for this knight, and looks like he should be able to, and get rid of black's bishop pair advantage, which is a permanent advantage, by the way. Having the bishop pair, we have temporary advantages in chess and a permanent advantage. What's an example of temporary advantage?
Development.
Right, somebody could have a lead in development, the other side may catch up with him and be equalized. But bishop pair is not something that you can so easily get rid of. It's pretty much a permanent one.
Or material advantage is also.
Material advantage is also a permanent one. It's black to play, and he obviously wants to preserve this bishop against knight c4. The question is, how does he do it? a6 or c6? Okay, remember, white could not play rook here because of that bishop. And this is white's strategic plan. A good follow-up to this pawn move is to eventually be able to play g5. And in order to play g5, you need a rook here. So the bishop must have an eye on this square.
So A6.
That's why a6 he played. Yeah, you really got to rationalize. Even though this move, c6, which also supports this square with this idea, you could make a good argument for that move too. That looked perfectly good option. So played a6, white to play, bishop f3. Okay, he's trying to get the light square bishop outside the light square pawn chain. Over here, harassing that rook for now.
Maybe he wants to challenge black's light square bishop.
Right, he could bring it here and trade the bishops. Without any provocation, black played bishop a7. Wow. Is he playing super cautious chess? What's the point behind this move? Looks like,
He's going to roll his pawns.
you see, white wants to play knight c4, kick the bishop, knight here, possibly jump into this square. So black probably will play c6 at some point, but it's a little bit risky c6 because of the position of this bishop. b3, a4, and the bishop would be trapped. So after bishop a7, it's white to play. White went on with his plan. h4. Black to play rook c8. It happens quite often that when you castle long, you move the king to the knight file, and you put a rook on the bishop file. You see how much maneuvering both sides are doing behind their own lines without much interaction, pawn-wise or piece-wise? That's a sign of great players. There's a great deal of maneuvering. That's why in Roy Lopez, which is one of the heaviest analyzed openings in chess, they say if you want to understand positional chess, you must play Roy Lopez. Because there's so much maneuvering by both sides behind their own ranks. So it's white to play, went for it. Knight c4. Rook e d8. What is he doing? He's just moving the rooks. He put the rooks on these two files. Now I put them on these two files. They look very mysterious. So in case you see moves like this, somebody plays this, you say either the guy is under 1400 or over 2400. Under 1400, he doesn't know what to do. He just moves the rooks back and forth. Under 2400, because there's a deep plan behind it.
Lasker, they say Lasker's rating was around 2,500. Like, compared to today's standards, it would be like 2,500.
I think it's unfair to compare great players from different eras. I mean, Lasker did not have an almost equal, like Karpov and Kasparov did, like Capablanca and Alkane did. And it's just hard to compare great players. Right. Didn't have full grandmasters working for him, like Carlson does. Okay, so after rook e d8, white played knight e3.
And they also didn't have chess engines back then.
Right, that too. Okay, so the good thing about knight e3 is that he blocked the diagonal. Now he can play rook here, possibly here, and then not worry about this diagonal anymore. And this threat is also in the air. So it's black to play. Right now, Middlegame is all about planning, not so much finding a good move here and good move there. What do you think would be a good way for black to regroup his pieces? For example, this bishop is already in a fantastic diagonal, even though it's one diagonal, but it's a one long, big, good diagonal. And these major pieces are behind the ranks. Where do you think this bishop should be?
It should
E8.
Where?
should be
E8.
We can go to e8, but where is the ultimate? Where should it ultimately be?
F7.
F7. Beautiful diagonal here, and controlling this diagonal too. So bishop e8. If you really want to deeply understand chess, I would suggest just this one game. Go over it 3, 4, 5 times. Try to understand all the subtleties of it. It is so deep in the way to maneuver your pieces. You see, at any time, a novice player, intermediate player even advanced player would think, oh, this is a c3, d5. This is for black to break through with these two rooks, which he may do, by the way, but at the right time, with all the pieces in optimal positions. Or white could play d4. He had the opportunity many times earlier, right? But advanced players, they made so much preparation. When they open the position, then it becomes unstoppable. It's almost like an avalanche. So white played rook fd1. So at least the rooks are opposing each other, and if black opens up the game, no accident should happen here. And what was black's plan with the light square bishop?
Bishop F7.
Bishop f7. By the way, had white played bishop here controlling this diagonal, black may still would have gone with this plan anyway. So bishop f7 he played, and now it's again time to assess the position, comparing the position of the pieces. White queen, black queen, roughly equal position both, but I would say this bishop is clearly better than this bishop. And of course this bishop doesn't have a counterpart. So black is dark square bishop on the white side. So I would say already white is black's slightly better once the position opens up. It is white to play. This is black's c6 and d5 are black's moves to come in. So white is already thinking of making it impossible for black play d5, c4. Of course, every move has an advantage and disadvantage. The advantage of this is that white has a fantastic outpost here for the moment. He may even go with a knight here next. The disadvantage is that these squares are weak, exactly. And black even can occupy immediately, even though it's not good to occupy immediately, will come under pressure. So after c4, black's only plan pretty much is to strike in the center right now. His pieces are well positioned, ready for opening up of the center. So c6 makes sense. White to play, rook c2. So obviously white is trying to capture with the c pawn, and he wants to have as much pressure on this file as possible. Black to play, bishop d4. This is Middlegame at its best. And Middlegame is all about piece optimization. Now that the knight cannot go to this square, you see every move of your opponent should give you a clue. What new opportunity did it create for me? This bishop came to a fantastic square. Knight cannot harass it. White to play, rook d c1. So white is not blinking. He's continuing with his own plan. Even though he's not challenging this bishop, he doesn't mind it. Black to play. Should black strike in the center, or can he still improve his position of any of his pieces?
The queen is not up.
Maybe he should go rook c7.
Excellent point. Queen is not in the best ideal square. Where does this queen belong?
g8.
G8.
Behind the bishop.
Oh.
B6.
B6, yeah.
B6, A5, along this diagonal. So queen c7. White to play, knight d1. Okay, what could possibly be the point of this move?
Knight c3.
Queen G2.
Queen g2, and then g4, g5. That could very well be. Or even maybe knight here with the same idea. Strengthening g5 one more time. So could be either.
Also Queen G2 attacks D5.
Puts more pressure on d5, right. Of course, d5 is not playable for the moment by black.
It is.
Okay, it is. Black to play, queen a5. White to play, knight c3. Interesting. So the point of this knight maneuvering is possibly to play queen d2 and knight here attacking the bishop this way. Black to play, what should he do?
D5.
Okay, d5 is our expected move. But that means it's going to bring all of these into life. Right? And that's the last thing you want to do, to optimize your opponent's piece position. So unless you're Trey. So black strikes with b5.
Then you optimize your opponent's pieces and still win.
This is very unusual move again. You're not supposed to push pawns in front of your castle king. And it does exactly that. With all the piece majors still on the board. There's so much mystery in Lasker's moves. So if white plays c takes here, which way black would recapture?
Bishop takes C3.
Yeah.
No, if pawn takes here,
Bishop takes knight.
bishop takes knight, then pawn takes and guards the h pawn.
And then pawn takes.
Right, but white can survive. May even have counterattack with rook b2 and all that. Chances are on pawn takes pawn, black will take with the a pawn. And then he is having an eye on putting a couple of majors on the a file. But white is trying to create a wall against this bishop. You see where these bishops and queens are heading and striking. So white played b3. So already in this position, it's clear who has the offensive position and who has the defensive, right? White is not attacking anything, but it's black who can all the shots. And you see the beautiful position of the bishops, especially this one. So how do you break through in a situation like this?
Sacrifice.
If it's justifiable, yes. And as we know, Mitch likes to sacrifice his opponent's pieces, and especially a game that he's not playing. So black can still improve the position, this position, before making a decisive move. And decisive committal moves are usually with pawns.
Rook
So rook
c7.
D7.
Maybe he figured this rook belongs here, because then he can force open.
So rook D7.
So rook d7 makes sense. And of course, white knows black's plan too. So he decided to deal with that, and he captured on b5. And how did he say black is going to recapture?
The A pawn.
With the a pawn. Because the reason he doesn't want to take with the c pawn, because white can close this entire diagonal, put it with the knight here, and open the c file. But with the a pawn capture, this knight has no good squares to go to. And it's just a matter of time. Black put a major, another one or two behind that queen, and the pressure becomes irresistible. So takes, a pawn takes. Okay, white to play. Sometimes when you are being outplayed by your opponent, you try to resort to tricks. If you don't believe me, ask Trey. So white played knight d5, taking advantage of the fact that black cannot recapture because he's doubled on the c file. And with this, he also creates a little threat. What is he threatening to do?
B4.
b4. And if queen a4,
Knight B6.
knight b6 wins an exchange. Even after queen check, which is kind of dangerous because of rook here and bishop here. So b4 is very risky. Chances are he's not going to go for that. So if anything, he can always reroute the knight back to e3
He also
if he needs to.
the C6 pawn.
And he's also attacking the c6 pawn. So how can black defend c6 pawn?
Queen A6.
Queen a6 is possible, but trouble with queen a6 is that knight goes here and attack the pawn one more time. And where does the queen go in that case?
Maybe go C5.
How about simple king b7? After all, this is his worst piece, least developed active piece. So he's probably thinking of putting this rook on here, and once he does this, then white must make a decision with this
Why
knight here.
didn't he capture the knight on D5?
Because rook takes rook.
No, with bishop.
Oh, with the bishop? He could, but after it takes, pawn takes,
C5.
right, it locks things up. Yeah, it looks good because the bishop here, pawn here, but it locks things up, and when position gets locked up at a very close high level, or even intermediate or low levels, chances are the game could end up in a draw. So it's clear that black is playing for a win. So after rook d7, it's white to play. I'm sorry, after king b7, it's white to play, and he played g4. So white pretty much is a sitting duck over here. He has no initiative, nothing active to do. His only hope is to stop black from breakthrough and on this side. So his only play is really along here to play g5.
The bishop in f3 is very weak, right?
Which one?
The big in f3.
This is a very bad bishop, yes. Hemmed in by his own square pawns. But of course, he's about to play g5 at the right moment. So, and open up the game. Black to play rook d d8.
Threatening the knight.
What's the point of this move?
Now you're threatening c65.
With this rook here, again, this knight would have had to move because pawn takes pawn is a threat. But that he also renewed the threat with this rook because this rook is not doing anything. So now this knight has to move.
On rook a8, rook takes c6.
Right, but what should white do with this knight right now? I think white made a little bit of a risky decision.
What, knight e7?
He played knight here. Okay, it's black to play, and how would you play in this position?
Rook C7.
Rook a8.
There's something deeper.
Ooh, there's 3 there. This is
Look a little bit deeper.
yeah. There's 3 there, isn't there?
c5.
Oh, I see.
No,
Yes,
you can-
bishop
you-
takes B3.
See, you can't just look around here, see what's happening over here. You have to look at the whole board.
Bishop takes b3.
Yeah, bishop takes B3.
Bishop takes b3.
There's Victor Korshin on one side. Oh, so simple.
Okay, so obviously white cannot recapture.
He can, but he gets made.
Right. So he went for the next best thing. Win an exchange. Of course, black can win an exchange too here anytime. Knight takes c8, rook takes c8. Okay. Could white have saved his rook now with, say, rook d2?
Nope.
Why not?
Bishop.
Bishop c3. Yes, very good. So white cannot save the piece right now.
Bishop c3, but then without a takes b3 then.
A takes b3.
Yeah, after bishop c3. After rook d2, bishop c3.
After rook d2, bishop c3.
And then a takes b3.
Right, the bishop would be hanging. So he's threatening to take. Obviously, he's going to retreat. But in the game, white played queen d2. Okay, this next move is really deep and nice. Most people in this position, they either trade queens and retreat this bishop.
Or take the exchange with check and then trade queens.
Exactly. That's what probably most people would do. Say, take the exchange first and say, takes, check, queen takes, and on queen check, queen b3, and the game could still end up in a draw.
Rook a8.
Because there would be opposite color bishops left on the board, which is notorious for being drawish.
We play rook a8.
So,
No, because it black takes bishop.
black to play queen a3. No rush, simple chess. White still cannot take here because of the cramped position of the major pieces here.
Well, it's maybe they won.
Right. So on queen a3, it's white to play. He wants to threaten to take the bishop.
Rook c3.
So how can he free himself? He played rook h1.
Why not rook c3?
Rook c3. Okay. Can anybody answer his question?
Yeah, I think, let me see. Bishop
Because
takes
bishop
rook.
takes a2, and then you can.
Bishop takes rook, queen takes back.
Oh,
Bishop takes, queen takes, and he's okay. But there's another refutation to rook c3. A little bit more subtle.
I still think bishop takes c3. What do they take back with?
Bishop takes c3, rook takes. Now what?
Bishop takes, rook takes, and then what?
Takes a2.
With what?
Bishop. Takes
Okay.
a2 with bishop and check.
And then after king a1?
No, queen just takes.
Queen takes, then you win the rook.
He's saying bishop takes here, rook takes. See, this queen is overloaded. It's guarding this and it's guarding this. So black takes advantage of it by playing check.
So now after king a1?
But this is only good for a draw, because after king a1, what does he do? If he moves the queen, he's going to lose this. And if he brings the bishop back check, he can always go back here. So this is only good for a draw. But Lasker, as black, is playing for a win. So he has a better continuation.
Rook a8.
Rook a8 then. Rook
Rook
a8
a8.
goes to mate.
At what point?
Rook a8 right now.
Right now? Right now doesn't work. Because on rook a8, he plays queen here. And on bishop check, it doesn't work anymore because simply king c1. And white king is safe. But Lasker found a beautiful solution to this situation.
Exactly how split positions from what wrong.
So here's our position. By the way, to answer Trey's question, why not bishop rook here? I think the refutation is this move.
Yeah, that makes more sense, but after queen b2?
Well, on queen b2, he plays queen takes queen, takes, bishop takes, he gets his exchange back, and black is 2 pawns up, should be able to win.
Well, okay, but how about rook takes b3?
Now,
Yeah.
on rook takes b3, black to play, what would he do?
Take the queen.
Yeah, he can always take here. Queen takes, queen takes, bishop takes, king takes.
And he's
And what's the material?
He's
You're
a
up,
piece down.
1 pawn.
He's a piece down.
He's a piece down.
Black's a piece down. Black's
Right.
Because of the bishop.
So,
His bishop takes c3.
on rook c3,
His bishop takes c3 and something.
bishop takes c3.
Bishop takes c3, rook takes c3, bishop takes a2 check, king a1, bishop b3 check, king b1.
But black is playing for a win.
But that is one.
Bishop takes, check, king here, and now
Bishop b3 check.
bishop b3 check,
Yep.
king here,
Rook a8.
rook a8,
Queen B2.
queen b2 the only move,
Now queen a2 check.
queen a2 check.
Yep.
Okay, after queen takes queen,
Bishop takes.
bishop takes, king here,
Bishop f7.
bishop retreats, and black is a pawn up and threatening rook check.
2 pawns.
1 pawn.
2 pawns.
2 pawns, black is up.
5? Yeah, 2 pawns is
So
up.
white pretty much has to stop that with this here. We go into a bishop and 7 pawns versus bishop and 5 pawns. And the fact that these pawns are in light squares also definitely black is winning. So rook c3 was not playable. So now that Trey refuted his own refutation, we continue with the game.
I refute the refutation of the refutation of the refutation.
We call him the big spoiler. Okay, is this the position?
Pretty close, but the rook's on c2.
So white figured there's too much congestion around here. He needs some breathing room. So he moved this rook out of the way, rook h1. And there are 7 moves before white resigns. You guys care to guess the moves for black?
Rook a8.
Rook a8, it's always a good move, taking advantage of the fact that white still cannot take that bishop. Something very interesting, by the way, in this game. Even though black to prepare to open up the center with d5, because a new opportunity was created, it never materialized. But anyway, you had to do it. You had to prepare for what your plan is. And you got a plan, and if something new happens that you don't have to use your plan, that's fine. But you always have to have a plan. White to play rook h2. So that's the point of rook h1. He wants to defend the second rank, which is pretty weak. It's black to play. What should he do?
Take the rook.
Take the pawn on a2.
With what?
Bishop.
Okay, so you're attacking that pawn 3 times, but it's defended 4 times. How can this make sense?
Maybe we could take.
Does it make sense? I'm testing you, Trey. I'm not saying it's not playable.
Rook
I'm just-
takes a2, followed by queen b3 check.
Okay, and after king c1,
And after king c1, then rook takes a2, queen takes a2.
and here comes the deadly check. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, he answered his own question. Bishop takes h2. a2. This is where there is more than counting number of attackers and number of defenders. Black is attacking this pawn 3 times. White is defending it 4 times. But even 3 would have been, under normal circumstance, sufficient. But there's more to this story. So, white to play. What's his only move?
Rook takes a2.
Rook takes. And now, Queen b3. Obviously, queen blockade is no good. So, what should he do?
Rook b2.
Anything wrong with rook b2? Because that's not what he played.
A1.
What? He did not play rook a2. Rook b2, I mean. Anything wrong with rook b2? This didn't happen in the game, but was there anything wrong with it?
Queen a4. Okay, I'm just throwing random moves out there.
Rook a2?
No, because rook takes. Oh, I see. Yes.
Rook a2, then rook takes queen,
Yeah, it doesn't work.
and there's no mate. And if rook takes, rook takes. So the problem with rook b2, it's simple now. Bishop takes, queen takes, check, and pick up this bishop.
Oh, okay. So what
Right.
prefer to be mated, or lose in a beautiful way than boring way, right?
So that's why white decided to walk the king. King c1.
And now rook takes a2.
And now rook takes a2. And how should white continue? Queen takes.
Practically forced.
And the beautiful lining up of the queen and bishop.
But that was
Why don't they block with the rook?
2, 3. That was
Isn't
four
that
moves.
queen takes queen?
If he blocks with a rook, that means his queen is hanging.
Because the rook's
So he blocks with the queen.
So what did he actually play? After all, he could have a rook and a bishop for a queen. But there is more to this story.
There's always more.
Queen d2.
Queen c3 now.
What was black's last move?
Bishop e3.
Queen c3. Maybe,
You got to remember Nimzowicz's quotation. The defensive power of a pin piece
Oh, queen
Queen takes
takes d3.
is imaginary.
Queen takes d3.
It looks like queen is guarding this pawn, but it really isn't because it's self. And
Did he resign?
that was the last move.
That was 5 moves. Bishop takes a2. Rook takes
5
a2,
moves, you're right.
check.
Oh, I see.
You see, white is paralyzed, and that was one of the geniuses of Emanuel Lasker. He creates such positions that his opponents were totally paralyzed. Let's look at white's options. What are white's options?
You can't take the queen.
He can play bishop.
Rook here fails to what?
Bishop takes the
Bishop takes, rook takes, and this bishop drops.
I thought we did.
Bishop here, what's wrong with bishop here?
You can gobble more pawns with queen takes e4.
Well, it's the same.
Or you can play queen c3 check.
He can't even win another pawn
Yeah.
Yeah.
before trying to win the queen.
Do some pawn.
So what else can white do? What's wrong with king d1?
Bishop takes d2.
Same problem. Bishop takes, rook takes, this bishop's hanging. So white is completely paralyzed, and this could simplify easily, and black with his extra pawns win the game. Fantastic, very deep move by Emanuel Lasker. Hope you enjoyed it.
Gracias.